Today on the Lunduke Show, I'm just going to get right into it. Forget the fancy introductions. This is Jim Hall. This guy to my side is Jim Hall. Jim, tell everyone one of the reasons they should be super psyched that you exist.
I wrote an operating system back in the 1990s called FreeDOS that is about to hit its 25th anniversary on June 29.
Yeah, 25 years. That is a quarter of a century that you you have been working on DOS, my friend. That makes you all sorts of awesome. All right. You've been on the show before, but it's been a long time. Give everyone the the elevator pitch of the FreeDOS stuff, and then let's move on from there.
Sure. So that quick history is, I was a DOS user growing up, and I used DOS for everything. And I was a big DOS power user. I even wrote my own utilities that expanded the DOS command line. And but in 1994, Microsoft said we're done with DOS. DOS is dead to us, and we're going to move on to Windows. And I'd used Windows 3, and if you remember Windows 3, it didn't look that awesome. And so I said,
wait a minute, Jim Hall. I've got to say this flat out. Of all the Windowses, Windows 3.1-ish was kind of my favorite. Like that particular area. Yeah, for reals. Like I actually worked on Windows 2000 for a little while at Microsoft, and I still prefer like Windows 3.1.1 Windows for work groups. Mwah, that was it. Windows got no better after that. And I'm not saying that was amazing or nothing, but I'm just saying that was the pinnacle for me. Anyway, we can get into that later.
I was not a huge fan. So
to be fair, nobody was a huge fan of that.
That is also true. Yeah. So I'd said, look, if Windows 4 is going to look anything like 3, I don't want anything to do with it. So I said, if we're going to keep a DOS, it's going to be up to us. So I was already a Linux user, and I just said, let's write our own DOS like they wrote Linux.
That's how you do it.
25 years later, we're still here.
That's awesome. That's so totally awesome. I love it. So the last time we talked, you were basically celebrating the fact that you had recently clocked over as doing DOS longer than Microsoft did DOS.
Yes, absolutely.
And that was a few years ago.
Yeah. Microsoft started doing DOS 81, I think, and then they stopped it. They stopped it as an official product in 1995, but they really stopped supporting the product or selling the product in 2000. So that's just short of 20 years, and we did 25.
Made it a quarter century. So that means that as far as DOS goes, you have been doing DOS. You did DOS longer than Bill Gates. You did DOS longer than Tim, the quick and dirty DOS guy. You did DOS longer than Gary Kildall did any sort of DOS. I mean, as far as DOS goes, you're now kind of the guy. For better or worse.
I guess I am. I hadn't thought about it. Yeah, I guess I am.
I mean,
me and a bunch of other
people, DOS longer than Bill and Gary. I mean, who else is there? Who else did more DOS in their life than you've done DOS?
Yeah, it's interesting. We have been doing FreeDOS longer than MS-DOS was a thing.
Right? Longer than MS-DOS, PC-DOS, DR-DOS, any of the DOSes.
Yeah, that's true.
Concurrent DOS, any of them.
We outlived them all.
That is crazy impressive. I'm going to say flat out here. So I'm like you. I came from the DOS side of things, right? I dabbled in Amigas and Unix workstations. And I mean, we were nerds. Of course we did all that stuff. We had, you have an Atari TOS machine over there. Of course you do, because you're a good nerd.
Right.
But DOS was where I lived. I mean, that was where I was for more than a decade. I mean, and when I looked out in the world, there was, and as a young nerd, as a young, scrawny, prepubescent and barely post-pubescent nerdy boy, I looked up to people like Gary Kildall, right? Like Gary Kildall of DRI was out there doing his thing, flying his planes around and shipping DOS everywhere. And I was like, man, those guys, that guy, I'm going to be like him when I grow up. And now here I am, a 700-year-old man sitting here recording a show with someone who's done DOS more than Gary Kildall did. You're my hero right now.
Oh, thanks, man.
FreeDOS is awesome. For those of you out there, because we normally cover Linuxy stuff on this show, it's mostly what we talk about because, I mean, this isn't a Linux show per se, but, you know, when you get into the open source and free software world, like 98% of it is Linux based, right?
Right, right.
But FreeDOS, free software, free open source software DOS is it might be my favorite little thing. It goes on everything. Like all my Linux computers have DOS on it. All of them.
Yep.
All of them. This is not a joke. This is totally not a joke. So this right here is a little smartphone dev kit that the from Purism, right? Very first thing I did after I got this was see how easy it would be for me to get FreeDOS on here. Like not natively, not native booting because it's an ARM, but get emulation running. And I started by putting DOSBox on here and then just bringing over the FreeDOS utilities. I'm like, all right, that works. And then immediately I have to work into the QEMU world and whatnot because I can't have a device that doesn't run FreeDOS. It doesn't work for me as a person.
I did the same thing when I got my Raspberry Pi.
Of course you did.
I booted it and I ran QEMU and put FreeDOS on it. So yeah, same thing.
I'm looking around here. There is no machine I have that was built in the last 10, 15 years that doesn't have FreeDOS sitting on it. Mm-hmm. I don't know what that says about me as a human being, but it's awesome, I think. And you made that possible, man.
Thank you.
Oh, that's exciting. All right. Everyone knows why you would want to have FreeDOS, because you want to run old DOS applications or just because you want to have a nice little distraction-free environment. I actually, so I write for Linux Journal, right?
Right.
You're doing an article for Linux Journal right now. Didn't it just come out?
It just got published about the sort of the Linux roots of FreeDOS. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So anyway, go to linuxjournal.com, read that. But so I write for Linux Journal, and probably I'd say half of the articles that I write are written inside FreeDOS, which is
very cool.
Which is weird for me. I'll be sitting there inside FreeDOS in wicked crazy old word processors that I still love and submitting them and publishing them in a digital Linux magazine, which is just awesome to me.
And you're not alone because, George R. Martin, I found this out a couple years ago. WordStar still runs a DOS machine running WordStar.
His DOS machine is running DOS 4. Oh, I'm going to screw this up. Is it just straight 4 or 4.401? 4.1?
Probably.
I think you're right. It was somewhere in there. And then with WordStar. And while I personally cannot endorse the usage of WordStar, WordPerfect, on the other hand, is totally okay to use.
I was a big WordPerfect fan. Absolutely.
Oh, man. Oh, such good word processors. All right.
Yeah.
So FreeDOS is out there. It's out there for 25 years. It is, I think, inarguably at this point, the most successful in longevity and probably the best, highest quality DOS operating system ever released.
Thank you.
Really, there have been a few DOS variants that have had a couple of additional features, like concurrent DOS and multi-user DOS and those sorts of things. But all those were really short-lived, and most of them from DRI, and they tried really hard to do funky things, and it didn't quite well, But what are you thinking? Where do you go from here? Clearly you don't get into the DOS business to eventually replace Linux because they're just very different beasts. But what do you do from here? Your compatibility is already crazy good.
Thank you.
How do you improve upon that? How do you make a better DOS than you already... Because you've already made a better DOS than DOS, which was the old saying of OS2. So you've already beaten them at that. What do you do next?
Yeah, so I'll start by saying, I do not ever imagine that FreeDOS is ever going to supplant Linux or become the big thing on PCs these days. It is a 16-bit operating system in a 64-bit world, so it is what it is.
Those were really good 16 bits. Those were 16 of my favorite bits. Here's the 16 great bits, and then here's the rest of the 64 bits that are all right. Those are all right bits.
DOS and DOS applications, they squeeze the most out of that hardware, so it really gets some innovative stuff.
640K. Boom. All you need.
40K, right? So yeah, the where do you go from here?
Yeah, where do you go?
We've had this discussion on the mailing list a number of times, especially when we're planning our forthcoming FreeDOS distribution, which will be 1.3. We were discussing, do we make that 1.3 or do we make it a 2.0? And it's like, you know, we're not okay. So we can't let FreeDOS can always needs to run DOS applications.
Right, it has to.
We can't change the core of FreeDOS where it no longer has DOS compatibility. It has to be DOS.
That would be crazy.
So,
it would be crazy
yeah.
if you released FreeDOS and you couldn't run a single DOS game. That would just be insanity.
We've had that thought experiment. I can go back to it if you like, but we can't break DOS compatibility.
No.
We can add to FreeDOS. That's really what we've been doing. And so, you can't really modify because we really can't break DOS compatibility. You really can't do much with the kernel anymore. The kernel's gone about as far as it's going to go on 16-bit. So really, we're looking at adding to the user space. And so we've been adding a lot to the user space. More recently, I've been encouraging folks to write or port Unix utilities to FreeDOS.
Which is cool.
We've always had a number of them. And in fact, back in the 90s, there was a project called GNU-ish, which existed solely to port GNU programs to MS-DOS. And so I've been encouraging people, let's revive that. I don't want to ever turn FreeDOS into like a mini Unix, but
it has its place. Why not? Yeah. Why not have working Emacs and wget?
Exactly.
I want to curl stuff from my C prompt. Darn it! That's important.
Let's get some of those Unix-like utilities, or Linux-like utilities, onto FreeDOS. So that way, if you're a Linux user, you feel a little more comfortable running FreeDOS. That's what I want to do. And so we've been doing a lot of that. We've been doing a lot of that.
And for those of you who haven't tried it, they actually have a software package installer UI that is actually quite nice. Yeah, it's really nice. So if you want to just explore the software available, that's all free softwareiness, you can do that, and it's surprising how much there is. It really is.
Jerome Shadell did our distribution, and he wrote the that package manager you're talking about called FD Impulse. I'm not quite sure if I'm supposed to be pronouncing that, but it's FD Impulse, and it's a great way to browse all the software because we can't just have it on one big list. So we break it out into the base, which is the stuff that reproduces the MS-DOS functionality. We've got util, which is pretty big, editors, GUIs, networking. We've got lots of different programs inside the FreeDOS distribution. So give it a try.
It is really worth trying just to see what you can do. Even if you're like, I mean, so many people that are young whippersnappers nowadays, I mean, they never used DOS, right? The only time they ever saw DOS was when they open up the command prompt in Windows XP or something like that. And so they just they don't know what can you do? It's just DOS, right? It is amazing. Web browsers and email clients, and it literally is possible. I mean, the web browsers, it's hard to connect to and use, I don't know, like 80% of the websites that are out there nowadays, but I blame the websites, not the browser. But it is amazing what you can accomplish. And it's truly, truly stellar. So you're working on adding user space stuff in 1.3. Have you guys talked about or announced what's going to be in 1.3 yet? Or is that still being figured out?
It's we've got a discussion about that on the wiki. It's really just an enhancement of 1.2, and so we're adding a lot of not a ton.
1.2 is a solid release.
Thank you. Yeah. We're adding some stuff from 1.2. The focus in 1.3 is we're adding some more utilities, but we're also taking a really hard look at open source. And so we had, over time, we've had some programs show up in the distribution that we kind of let go because they kind of have been around for a long time that didn't exactly adhere to open source. And so we're cleaning those out. And so, we're not like dumping a whole bunch of stuff.
You're Stallmanizing it. I like it.
Yeah, not quite that far, but yeah, we're trying to make sure we're adhering a bit closer to that model. And so there's a couple of utilities that are in 1.2 that won't be in 1.3, but there's going to be a whole bunch of other stuff that'll be in there that we really like. We also decided that games are not core, and We will include games,
Uh,
but
ah,
I know. And actually,
eh,
I say that based even knowing that the number one reason people run FreeDOS is to run DOS games.
right? I
The
mean, that'd be
reasons
like the
behind
DOSBox people coming out and saying, by the way, we don't support graphics or Sound Blaster anymore.
right,
We're just here
right,
for Fox Pro, just so
right.
everyone can run Fox Pro and DBase 3. And that's it.
So so to clarify what I mean by games aren't core
They aren't in
is
the core list,
they're
the
not in
core
the core.
section of games. Yeah, of
Yeah,
apps.
so it's in that it means that if they're not core, it means that we have great flexibility, freedom to add new games, drop
Sure.
other games, and so there'll be some new games and some other games will kind of fall out, but so there'll be some changes there because we want to make sure that people use FreeDOS for four different reasons. They install it for three, but they use it for four. One is they're going to be playing DOS games,
Yeah.
and so that's why I want to make sure that the FreeDOS distribution has some DOS games on it that are
Got
fun to
it.
play.
You got it.
And then some people are going to run or install FreeDOS so they can run legacy software. And that I'm surprised every year. I'm surprised by
Yes.
certain things that people are still doing with legacy systems that are actually like still in use.
Yes.
Uh,
Absolutely.
I at my last job, we retired a DOS system just last year, so
That's
it's
sad.
there's still some DOS systems still around.
Oh, keep
Um,
them running. Bandage those up. MacGyver, get some bubble gum and some paper clips, and you keep them working.
and then number three
Retire a
is, of
DOS
course,
system.
people are running
Jim, Jim,
embedded
Jim.
systems. So people are taking embedded systems and having to support them, and FreeDOS does a great job there. And
FreeDOS
then
is like a killer embedded system for that. Yeah.
it's very
Yeah.
tiny, absolutely.
Tiny,
And then
fast, boom.
the fourth one, and this is where I don't think people really install it for this, but they just use FreeDOS for this, and that's for BIOS updates.
Oh, yeah.
You
Yeah,
get a
yeah.
lot of motherboard manufacturers that still have their BIOS updates that are a
Yeah.
DOS package.
Yeah.
I don't really think that people are installing FreeDOS for that. They're just putting it on a USB
On a
fob drive.
USB drive, and yeah.
But that's how
It
people
still
are using it.
works. Yeah. I mean,
Absolutely.
there was a period of time, and I don't know, do some of the companies like Dell and whatnot still do that, where you could select FreeDOS instead of an operating system? This was happening for
Yep.
a while.
Yes. Yes. You can still buy machines today that are shipped with FreeDOS on them. Yeah.
That's so
Absolutely.
cool. I feel like they should take all the Windows stickers off and put a little powered by FreeDOS stickers on those laptops.
I would love to have the FreeDOS. I would pay Dell to have the FreeDOS fish put on there if they're going to put that on there.
You
I
know
would have
what?
that conversation with somebody.
I'm not lying. I would pay a premium. Maybe not a huge premium, but I would pay a little premium. No Windows OEM sticker on the bottom, nothing, just little powered by FreeDOS.
Yeah.
That's it.
So Dell, if you're
Glorious.
watching, or HP, or anybody else that puts FreeDOS
Anybody.
on their machine, give me a call.
Just, I love FreeDOS so much. All right. Have you thought about, I mean, a lot of people ran DOS, but a lot of people ran a graphical environment with DOS, whether it
Yes.
was Windows 3 or Gem or any of those sorts of things. Have you guys ever thought about standardizing on one and just saying, you know what, this is our blessed graphical environment? It's not DOS. It's just userland application, but here's
Right.
Gem. Gem is open source
Yep.
now, right?
Yep.
So you got
Open
free
Gem.
Gem and open Gem and all that sort of thing.
Yep.
And for those of you who don't know Gem, you're a bad person and you need to go study history. Gem was awesome. Also from Digital Research, also from Gary Kildall, who may he rest in peace. I love Gary Kildall. Sorry, it's just a thing. I had Stuart Chaffee on the show like a year ago, and we ended up just talking about Gary Kildall for like 30 minutes. Side note, wow. But have you ever thought about like blessing one and saying, hey, we've got OpenGem. Install OpenGem, and here's a word processor and a few other things to go with it. So here's your graphical environment. Have you ever thought about doing that?
We've kind of gone back and forth about do we standardize on a GUI, or do we just include some that are popular, and we've never wanted to actually standardize on one for a couple of reasons. One is that FreeDOS is DOS, it's not Windows. So
but like
keep it a
Windows
core
3.11 is
test-based
still
operating system.
just DOS. It's just a really complicated user space stack.
But still, FreeDOS is a
I get you.
command line operating system, so we're going to stick to that core. And the other one
Oh.
is, I guess, more practical, which is that
Just so you know, I both agree with you and respect you and want to fight you over that answer, all at the same time. I'm having very mixed emotions. Continue.
that's cool. And the other one's more practical, which is that which one do you pick? If you're gonna pick one, which one
Yeah.
do you pick?
What would you pick? What would you pick if
Oh
you were to
man,
standardize on it right now? What would you pick? Not saying you're gonna standardize on it,
you
but
know,
Jim Hall.
I have a soft spot in my heart for OpenGem, which is
Yeah,
the open source version of Gem. I have a
it's
soft
cool,
spot for
right?
that. Yeah,
I do
yeah.
too. I do
You
too.
know, because we include that actually in the FreeDOS distribution. We include
Yeah, you do.
OpenGem, we
It's
include
there.
Ozone, we include Seal,
Yeah.
and I think that's just the three. I think that's all of it. And more recently, PCGOS went open source.
Yes.
They went open source, and
Is
they,
GeoS is open now?
they went open source, yeah. And
Oh.
I want to say like 6 months ago, maybe four, and uh, they still haven't been able to build a working binary from the open source code. They actually are still trying to make that work. But
Well, for those of you who are not aware, GeoS, GEOS, dates back to the early 80s.
yeah,
There was a version for the Commodore 64.
yeah.
Was an Atari version of GeoS?
I
Or
don't
was
know what
that
I don't know if there's an Atari version of
or was that
GS, but
just Gem?
I think that was just Gem. I think because they called it
Yeah.
TOS. They called it TOS.
Yeah, the
TOS.
toss, and then
Yeah.
there was but GeoS was interesting.
But GEOS, I want to say that GEOS was also used as the GUI for the DOS floppy of like AOL or something back in the day.
Was it?
Yeah, yeah. Before they
It would
switched
make
to Windows
sense.
as a standard. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's a long living GUI, and
I mean, not
a lot of
as
people
long
like it.
living as FreeDOS, mind you, but long living.
Hey, it's come back, so that's good.
It's true.
But the problem though is that they haven't been able to get the source code to compile uh, a working binary, and so I can't tell you how many times I've gotten emails from people saying, "Hey, PCGOS is actually open source now. You should include this in the new version." We're like, we want to, but I can't just take the proprietary binary and just
And
assume
dump it
that
in.
that's I can't just dump it in. I have to have a working binary from the
You
new
have to be
source
able to
code.
build it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, again, that's kind of what we're trying to do with 1.3 is make sure we adhere closer
Oh,
to
but
that. So,
GeoS would be cool. GeoS would be
GIOS
cool.
would
I
be
mean, it's no
cool.
gem. It's no gem.
Yep, yep. But I would love to see it. And so, we're kind of waiting for that. We're not entirely waiting, holding the distribution for it, but we've been delaying a little bit, waiting to see if they can do something.
Oh, that would be cool. That would be
Yeah,
super, super cool. All right, all right. That's a fair answer. I'm gonna let
yeah.
you have that
Thank
answer.
you.
I feel like, man, I would love to see that though. Like, I would love to see a resurgence of Gem on top of FreeDOS.
Yeah,
Like people writing like a new application for Gem. Like, like I
that
just
would be
in
like a browser,
2019.
like a browser. That would be
Oh
cool.
my!
Oh yeah.
Can you do networking inside of Gem?
I don't
I've
know.
never done
Maybe
it.
I've never tried.
I mean, I've done word processing. I've done a little bit of
Yeah,
doodling,
yeah,
and I've moved around a lot of files. But
yeah.
I've never
I
done networking. I
I
mean, I
don't
didn't
know.
do it like that back then. When
You
I
know,
networked back in those days, I hopped out to DOS, loaded up a random like Q modem or something like that, and dialed up a BBS or something.
right,
But I
right.
never in
I
Gem. That
I'll have
was.
to give that a try.
Is there like
It's
a trumpet windsock equivalent for Gem?
we'll probably have to do it through. That's the thing is back in DOS, everything is, all the applications have to kind of have their own networking
Right,
capability
and
kind of
tie
built
into a
in.
different packet driver
Yeah.
beauty whopper. Yeah,
But the overall Gem I don't know that maybe the overall Gem desktop, maybe I can have something on network.
I have no
I'm
idea.
embarrassed to suddenly realize I've never tried that.
I've never tried it. That's why
But
I
but
asked.
also every time I run FreeDOS, it's so rare I ever run a GUI because I'm just there to compile some stuff
I
or
know,
run a
me too.
DOS program, and so I don't really need the GUI on that.
For me, it's weird because I don't want FreeDOS to be some gooey multitasking.
Right,
Blech, we got
right,
that. I got like my Linuxy desktop here. It's all gooey to Kingdom Come. It's blinged out like crazy. I don't need my DOS to be like that. I
right.
don't know. For me, honestly, more than anything, I just love the idea of taking one of those I don't want to use the word old or ancient or retro here, but let's just say the nostalgic graphical interfaces of my youth,
Yep.
and bringing them back. Like I love that quality of it, to be inside of a free and open source DOS, running a free and open source GUI that were both either direct descendants of or heavily inspired by the operating systems of the 80s is
Right.
just amazing to me. Like that just feels so good, way down in my bits and parts, you know? I just love that so much. Anyway, so if you guys do decide to go GUI and you don't go gem, you're wrong and I have to fight you, but please go gem at some point.
Okay.
Man, so after you've been doing it for 25 years,
Right.
what's your official title? Like, do you have a title within the gem or within the FreeDOS community? Now I've got
Yeah,
gem on the mind.
I'm founder and project coordinator is
All right,
how
so
I've
that's pretty
described
big.
myself for a while. Yeah.
How long do you maintain that project coordinator status? Like, is there a line at
Oh.
which where you hit 50 years, where if you've been literally making DOS for half a century, where you're like, you know what, I'm gonna make an open source Amiga. Like what's the next step for you? Which I guess that technically exists anyway.
Yeah.
But what do you do? Do you keep doing this? I mean,
You
you're
know,
still
it's
smiling when you're talking about it.
I
That's pretty
I
big.
am I am but it's so people always ask me like, hey, you're the FreeDOS guy, you must run FreeDOS all the time. I'm like, I don't run FreeDOS all the time, and it's not like the only thing I ever do. It's just the thing I'm known for.
It is, right?
I've written or contributed to dozens of open source software projects over
Yeah.
the years, and in fact, what I work on quite a bit when it's not FreeDOS is I work on GNOME.
Yeah.
I got my master's degree a couple years ago. I specialize in usability testing. In fact, my capstone thesis was usability testing in open source software. And so I've been doing a lot of usability testing with the GNOME folks and helping them improve the user interface and the user experience. So I've been doing a lot of that, looking to maybe help other open source projects with their usability. So yeah, it's not all FreeDOS for me. My other open source software work is just maybe not as prominent, I guess I'll say, not as prominent.
As a side note, this is just a random thing. So not only do I run FreeDOS for fun and whatnot, but for about 3 or 4 years, I had my BBS ran on FreeDOS. Well, it ran on Linux that spawned FreeDOS instances, and then it shrunk out FreeDOS instances in favor of DOS EMU when it had to pass off a fossil driver. Anyway, it was a very complicated setup. But in that time, it's just a random little side note. So DOS, single user,
Yeah.
no encryption, no password,
Yeah.
no security really of any sort in that system. I never got hacked in all of those years of running FreeDOS ostensibly as a server that should have been easy to snoop because it was all over Telnet. And
Right.
yet, despite everyone trying, people were running scripts of every kind, every MySQL attack they could think of. They couldn't break into it, which leads me to believe that FreeDOS is the most secure server operating system on planet Earth. Do you have comment on that, Jim Hall?
Well, the nice thing about that is, FreeDOS doesn't have a whole bunch of services, so you can't
It
really attack.
doesn't.
You can't
It's
attack.
running one thing.
Doesn't have SSH running. Exactly. It's one thing at a time, except for some TSRs. Although I do like to joke sometimes that ever since we were started, we still have the local user gains root privilege bug, because if you're
What?
running FreeDOS, you're the local user. DOS is always has total power over the machine.
Got right.
You boot up the machine, there is no user concept. You are always effectively root.
You are the user.
Yes.
Yes.
So sometimes I'll say, well, we kind of got that local user becomes root problem. Well, because when you boot FreeDOS, you're root.
You're root.
Yeah.
Right. That's as it should be. And I'm not saying Linux should be like that, just so everyone is clear.
Right, right, right.
And also, before I get the hate mail, I do know that yes, if I left a FreeDOS server running unattended for 75 years, it probably would be less secure somehow than the Linux server that's well patched. I
Right.
understand that. I'm mostly joking, but only a little bit. All right. But okay. So after a quarter century, you guys are coming out with 1.3. That coming out later this year, next year. What are you guys planning on?
Later this year. Later this year. Yep.
How many times has 1.2 been downloaded, roughly?
In terms of the total, I don't know that I've got that, but my spreadsheet's right over here. I've got
Good.
I ran stats the other day, and I haven't done this in a while, but we have been running a pretty consistent about 50,000 downloads every month since May of 2017. Little more, little less, but pretty consistent 50,000 downloads every month of FreeDOS.
That is awesome. I mean, you've probably thought about this a little bit, but that puts you at a higher download level than some of the Linux distributions that are considered to be high profile.
Yeah. That's, I mean, an interesting thought, right?
I've been on the board of some of said distributions. I know how many downloads they get. And yeah, there's plenty that get more, but like some of the big name ones don't get FreeDOS numbers. They would kill for FreeDOS numbers. That's got to feel pretty good.
It does feel pretty good.
Man.
It's got people downloading, it's a DOS operating system. It's 16 bits in 2019. We still have people downloading it. I just think that's just cool.
Right. It is cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you ever thought about like corporatizing? Like becoming FreeDOS Megacorp, like go full Syndicate and like go hardcore.
No, I haven't.
Also, by the way, Syndicate, great game to play in FreeDOS.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
I haven't thought about doing that. And in fact, I actually got asked a couple of times by companies, hey, you're the FreeDOS guy. Would you sell it to us? I'm like, well, it's GNU GPL. You're not selling that, but I can't sell you those rights. But but you're free to use it. But I've also had some people ask, did you
tell them you're free to also just send me money anyway, and you can just have it like everyone else can?
Told them that. I said, if you'd like to tell your corporating people this is a license fee, go for it. But it's you can download it for free on your own anyway. But no, I've actually had some other people ask if I'd be interested in working for them. So I had a company, I don't remember their name anymore, but it was back in around 2000, maybe late 90s, that had asked me if I would like to join them as a chief architect, because they had a DOS embedded system that they were converting to FreeDOS, and so they were.
That's cool.
Yeah, they're like, do you want to work for us? I'm like, that's interesting. And then I got a little further down the email and it said, must move to Japan. No, I'm gonna stay where I'm at. I like where I'm at. This is a good place.
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah, but that's cool though. I mean, they always talk about getting involved in open source projects, and that leads to employment various places. But you don't think working on FreeDOS is necessarily going to accomplish that. And yes. Oh.
I reached out to some Microsoft people last year. And I actually was pestering some people to say, you guys need to release MS-DOS, like re-release it under an open source software license, which they eventually did. And I like to think maybe I had some small part in that.
Was it version like 1 or something like that? Or 2 or something?
1.25 and version 2, I think, were the versions they released.
It's a start.
It's a start. And, and I'm like, at the time I was like, I would love to come work for you guys and help you release it as open source software, but they did it on their own, so oh well. But I
don't know. There's a lot of DOS versions yet to be released. If you could go to work for IBM and convince them to start releasing PC DOS and OS 2, I'd be happy about that too.
IBM, give me a call. I'm right here.
You could be like the A team of going into big companies and getting all the software released as open. That's if you can find Jim and you can can afford him.
That's probably my niche actually. Is it's you're
Be
running an open
awesome.
source, running an open source software project for 25 years, and running all these other ones, participating in all these other ones. It's 25 years is a
Yeah.
long time. It kind of shows that if you're an organization, a company trying, I'm being a little serious here. If you're an organization trying to get into the open source scene, trying to release your stuff as open source software, yeah, I think that's probably where I could make an impact, because I clearly have a track record being able to build up a community,
Right?
yeah, for 25 years. So
I think you
yeah,
kind of do.
yeah.
You're kind of that guy. Oh, holy moly, Jim. Congratulations, man. This
Thank
is
you.
huge. I mean, huge. Because Linux itself has barely been over the 25 year. Because we hit the
Right.
25-year hump 2 years ago with
A couple years
Linux.
ago, yeah, because they were
And
1991.
yeah, 91.
Yeah,
Right. So, I mean, that's wow.
yeah.
I mean, cool.
And I always say, there would be, and I say this in the article that I wrote for Linux Journal we talked about earlier, that there would be no FreeDOS if there weren't Linux.
Yeah.
I created FreeDOS. I decided to do FreeDOS because, hey, I saw these people. I was a college student at the time, and so I said, people made a free version of Unix that actually was installed. I'd already was running Linux at the time, and I'm like, people have made a free version of Unix,
Why not?
and share the source code. I'm like, how hard can it be to do DOS? I said as a college student who was not a
Yeah,
computer
that sounds
science
like a
student.
college student thing to say.
Yeah,
Yeah.
especially when I wasn't computer science, so I really had to. I learned it on my own. So so, and I think actually, ironically, if I had been a computer science student, I was a physics student. So if I had been a computer science student and kind of quote unquote knew better, I probably wouldn't have done FreeDOS, because I would have felt overwhelmed, to make an operating system.
Yeah.
But as it was, I just said, well, let's just do it. And I just jumped in both feet. And which is actually the advice I give now to people. People are like, I don't know if I have enough knowledge to
Eh,
do a open source software project on this or that. And I'm like, just do it.
ignorance is
Just do it.
power.
It is.
Just
It is.
jump in. Yeah, it doesn't matter if you don't know. Well, thank heavens you didn't know how impossible it was going to be. I'm so glad. Before we head off,
Yeah.
I send people off to download FreeDOS and make those stats go up even higher, which just makes me smile. We're going to run down a couple of categories here.
Mm-hmm.
I need to know who you are as a person deep down. So we're going to run through categories of types of software, and you're going to tell me which one is your personal favorite that run under FreeDOS. All right?
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Now we're going to start with this. We're going to start with softball, word processor.
Actually, that is a tough one.
Include version number.
WordPerfect 5.1.
Yes. That is the clear and obvious only answer. Yeah. WordStar is not allowed on this. It's a respectable answer. Sorry, George R.R. Martin, but Jim Hall does win this one. Spreadsheet.
Oh, that's easy. As easy as has always been, and probably will always be my favorite spreadsheet.
Though, to be fair, I mean, there were some iterations of Lotus that were quite nice as well. But
Absolutely.
I mean, as easy as, just built upon that. And yes, as easy
great.
as. No doubt about it. Web browser.
Dillo is the browser that we have on FreeDOS, and that's a good browser.
Don't you guys also have a version of Lynx on there as well?
We do have a version of Lynx on there. Yep. So you run it text mode, absolutely.
So, but you go for the Dillo over the Lynx. That's okay.
Yeah.
It's all right. I'm more of a Lynx man myself, but I respect your answer.
Right.
Action game. Now, when we're talking action, that can be first-person shooter, anything actiony.
Always have loved going back and playing Doom.
Just the original.
The original Doom 1.
Doom 1. Do you ever, or have you in the last 5 to 10 years, done multiplayer under Doom?
Not in the last couple years, no. But we used to do it all the time back in my very, very first job. We would, at the end of the day, we'd dedicate part of the network just to us, and we'd play a little bit of multiplayer Doom deathmatch.
Right. Yeah. Fair answer. Strategy game.
Oh man, it's been forever since I played a strategy game on DOS. I don't know that I have one.
What? Come
I
on,
don't
it's an
don't.
easy one. You know what? I'll broaden it up: strategy or simulation title.
Oh, simulation. TIE Fighter for me.
Yes, yes. Really, any
Yes.
of the X-wing Tie Fighter
Oh,
series are
yes.
a-okay.
Yes.
Yeah,
X-Wing was great. TIE Fighter was the one that came after it and had a little bit better graphics. But you know what? There's just something about being a TIE Fighter, an
it's so
Imperial
great.
guy.
So
Absolutely.
great.
Oh
So
yeah.
truly fantastic. Absolutely love it. Platformer. Side-scrolling platformer.
Commander Keen. The first Commander Keen.
Commander Keen, huh? You're
Yeah.
jumping right past Jill, you're jumping right past Jazz, and you're going straight
Oh,
to Keen.
I love Joe the Jungle as well. I love the original Duke Nukem before it was Duke Nukem 3D. But I still have a
Wait
soft
a
spot
minute.
for
Wait a minute.
Commander
Are
Keen.
you insinuating that Duke Nukem 3D is no good, or simply that they're different categories?
Different categories. Duke Nukem 1 and 2 were a 2D scroller.
Okay.
Duke Nukem 3D
Okay.
was
To be
3D
fair,
shooter.
we got to make sure we were
Yeah.
clear on this because I was going to get hate mail
Oh
otherwise.
yes. Oh
We got to
yes.
be very crystal clear on this. What is, when you boot up FreeDOS, the thing that you do that makes you smile the most?
Oh,
There's got to be a thing.
it's the simple thing is running the dir command. That I don't know, it's just kind of cool to have that little pause at the end while it does the calculation of free space. That's just I always kind of smile the first time that happens whenever I boot up my FreeDOS. That's the first thing the first time I do that, it just gives me a big smile doing that.
Do you dir or do you dir whack W or do you dir whack? What command options do you pass to your dir?
My first run is always dir, just plain dir. But if it's a long directory
You
scroll,
got it. You
so
got a
that's
dub.
basically, yeah, for those of you out there, that's basically ls. But if it's too long, I do dir/w.
I love I love that here we are in 2019 talking on this show that is broadcast on all the internet, and we're talking about DOS commands, but we're like, for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, here's the Unix commands that are
Yes.
like that. The world has gotten weird, man.
Yeah.
I would have never seen that coming. Like, I would have never
Yeah.
expected that
Yeah.
we'd be at a point now in 2019 where DOS commands are so esoteric and bizarre that no kids nowadays even know what they are. But the
I
Unix commands, everyone knows LS and whatnot. Yeah.
I had to write an article I think it was last year that basically said, "Hey, if you're new to FreeDOS, but you know Linux. Here's how to get from Linux to DOS, right? Here's how to navigate around FreeDOS. Here's the roughly equivalent Linux command. So ls is this, but no, there's no ls under DOS. It's dir." And I had
It's
to write that
dir.
because I started to get so many emails from people, and I don't know why, but it was just suddenly this rush of emails from people saying, "I've installed FreeDOS. I don't know what to I don't know what to do. I don't know how to do anything." I'm like, dir. So I wrote this article that just
Dir.
talked about basically the basics of getting around. Dir and CD will get you, that does almost everything you need to do until you need to run a program. So yeah, dir and CD, those are the things to know.
You know, it's funny. For me, it's kind of a similar thing. I have this ritual, and it's not something I consciously do, but I've installed my FreeDOS under an emulator or raw hardware on so many systems now. The first thing I do, after I, make sure I have all the files I want, I boot it up, ver mem, and then I
Oh,
smile. Every
yeah.
time I'm like, these are just things I need to know. I need to
Yeah.
know, particularly like how much of my base RAM is free right now. And I like the verb because I look at it and I'm like, yeah, that's what I'm running. I'm running that right now. And don't, no, for those of you who wonder, ver is like you name, kind of.
Yes. Yes. It's like you
Yes.
named that shit.
Or,
Yeah.
like a very unfancy screen fetch.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. 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 All right, we can head off into the world now. Jim, congratulations again, man.
Thank you.
Please don't stop. And if you do stop doing the FreeDOS things, please make sure you find someone as absolutely adorable as you to continue doing it because it would make me smile a lot.
There are loads of people working on FreeDOS. It's not just me.
Yes.
So I have to thank all of them actually for and the community, because the whole thing about FreeDOS is that it can't just be one person sitting and writing it. It's got to be everybody participating.
So
So we have
cool.
it's the community, man. That's really what makes it for me.
I was about to say that wraps up this show, and then I realized I haven't done the sponsor spot yet. I didn't even plan a sponsor spot yet. But here, watch this. This is thinking on your feet. You see that machine right here?
Yeah.
That was made by Pogo Linux, one of the sponsors of this show. You can only see the side of it here, but I'm going to say this straight up. This is the only machine in my house that I have yet to put FreeDOS on. That could. It's got an i9 in her, about 87.21 gigarams, and it's beefy. Maybe I should boot FreeDOS on here just to do a show about putting FreeDOS on the most ridiculously powerful rig I can imagine.
That
I
would
should
be
do
cool.
that. Go to pogolinux.com, spec that out. Buy your own machine to put FreeDOS on. All right, Jim. Thank you, man. Thank you for this.
Thank you.
Thank you for the work you've done. Thank you for being a truly cool person in the open source world. I'm going to say this flat out. For those of you who don't follow, Jim, what's your Twitter handles and stuff like that?
You can reach me at FreeDOS_project, and my personal is at Jim F Hall. F as in Frank, let's say.
Did you just make that up? Let's go. F as in Frank.
F as in FreeDOS.
F as in FreeDOS. Fancy.
Yes.
Your middle name should be FreeDOS. Jim FreeDOS. Oh.
I need to get a tattoo.
Here's the thing. When you go and watch the stuff that the FreeDOS project puts out or that Jim himself puts out, it's never unhappy. Like, I never am reading through that stuff and think, wow, Jim just took an angry hot take about the current world affairs and just made me sad about it. Never happens. Yeah. I always come away from it thinking Jim likes people, FreeDOS is cool, open source is rad, and things are neat in the world. So please follow this man and listen to whatever he says, because it's probably right. All right, we're going off into the world now, Jim. The last word was mine. You're not allowed to talk anymore. I'll see everyone later.